Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tracing the history and the incredible evolution of one of the most powerful entities in human history. But, before we really get into the story of the tech giant itself, let's start with a really fascinating contrast hidden right in our source text today. Okay, let's dive right in. You've probably seen Wikipedia's humble plea for a $2.75 donation at some point. Right at the top of their pages, there's this incredibly grounded message, right? They're basically asking readers for less than $3 to keep human knowledge completely free, created by actual people instead of machines, and, crucially, entirely ad-free. Now, running one of the top 10 most visited sites in the world obviously requires massive resources. Yet it relies entirely on nonprofit support. Almost half of its budget, 45%, goes directly to technology. 32% goes to volunteer support, and the rest just covers fundraising and general expenses. So what's really fascinating here is the sheer contrast. While Wikipedia is out there fighting for small, everyday donations to keep ads away from information, Google, the actual subject of our explainer today, well, they built a multi-billion-dollar empire specifically by placing advertising right next to information. It's basically two titans of the internet with entirely opposite philosophies on how knowledge should actually be monetized. So here's our roadmap for how a simple dorm room project became a total technology monopoly. First, the Stanford startup. Second, growth and going public. Third, the alphabet empire. Fourth, the AI revolution. And finally, number 5, monopolies and legal battles. All right, part 1, the Stanford startup, from Backrub to Google. We begin way back in January 1996 at Stanford University. Two PhD students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, started a research project that they originally nicknamed Backrub. And yeah, they actually called it that because the system checked backlinks to estimate how important a particular site was. Now, the real secret sauce here was PageRank. While conventional search engines at the time were literally just counting how many times a keyword appeared on a page, Page and Brin theorized a much, much better system. Their algorithm actually analyzed the relationships among websites. It determined relevance based on the number and the importance of pages linking back to the original site. Honestly, it completely revolutionized search forever. And man, things escalated incredibly fast. They renamed the project Google, which is a famous misspelling of the math term Google, a 1 followed by 100 zeros. It basically signified their massive goal to organize huge quantities of information. They officially founded it in 1998 with early backing from Amazon's Jeff Bezos, and then secured a massive $25 million funding round from major VC firms just 1 year later. Moving on to part 2, growth and going public, building the Goliath. As we shift into the early 2000s, Google makes a really defining choice. Despite the founders initially being super opposed to an ad-funded search engine, they started selling text-based keyword advertisements to keep their page design nice and uncluttered. This pivot into monetizing knowledge, it unlocked explosive exponential financial growth. Now get this, $1 million. In a stunning twist of tech history, Page and Brin actually proposed selling Google to Yahoo for a mere $1 million back in 1998. And Yahoo refused. No way, right? They even passed on a second chance to buy them in 2002 because they balked at a $5 billion valuation. Today, that's widely considered one of the most catastrophic strategic missteps in corporate history. Now contrast that huge missed opportunity with $1.65 billion. That is what Google itself paid to acquire YouTube in 2006. After a super successful IPO in 2004, they didn't waste any time. They quickly used their capital to just buy up the web's biggest video platform, locking in a massive creator-driven economy and really cementing their dominance. Which brings us to part 3, the alphabet empire, reorganizing the web. By 2015, Google wasn't just a search engine anymore. They had grown so large, offering mobile operating systems, fiber optics, even life extension research, that they completely reorganized under a massive new holding company called Alphabet, Inc. Their portfolio had just become incredibly sprawling at this point. We're talking Google Search, YouTube, Android, plus the AI company DeepMind, and the self-driving car project Waymo. This brilliant restructuring allowed Sundar Pichai to take over the core Google products, while Alphabet managed this futuristic empire that touched almost every single part of modern life. On to part 4, the AI revolution, the frantic pivot.
For over 2 decades, Google's dominance seemed pretty much unshakable. However, the entire landscape shifted dramatically with the sudden release of ChatGPT, and that triggered an immediate, really frantic defensive posture inside the company. Management literally issued what they called a code red. It was a strict directive that all of their most important products, specifically those with more than 1 billion users, had to incorporate generative AI within months. This internal panic really shows you just how urgently senior management viewed the threat to their unchallenged dominance. The race was absolutely on. So they had to do a massive pivot, moving away from their legacy search, which relied on keyword indexing, those old PageRank algorithms, and standard blue links, straight into a brand new generative AI suite. They started aggressively integrating the Gemini chatbot, the VO text-to-video model, and the Imagen text-image model directly into their core everyday products.
And to protect all this new cloud and AI infrastructure, well, they're spending heavily. In early 2025, Google agreed to a record-breaking $32 billion acquisition of the cybersecurity startup Wiz. It's actually their biggest cash deal ever, specifically aimed at locking down security for their growing AI and cloud services. Finally, Part 5. Monopolies and legal battles, the government versus big tech. Because as their size, wealth, and influence reach these unprecedented heights, international regulators began aggressively pushing back against how they do business. From Washington over to Europe, it's just been a steady stream of antitrust lawsuits aiming to level the playing field. In August 2024, a U.S. court literally ruled Google an illegal monopoly in internet search. Just a month later, the EU slapped them with a €2.4 billion fine over their shopping search practices. And by September 2025, a U.S. judge officially barred them from having exclusive contracts for search and their Gemini app. Regulators are actively trying to dismantle these monopolies piece by piece. So this brings us to a really critical question. Can a search monopoly actually survive the AI revolution? As they battle federal courts trying to protect their legacy ad-driven business on one side, while fighting a frantic AI arms race on the other, what exactly does the future hold for the internet's most powerful platform? Are they going to adapt and dominate this next era of computing? Or will a brand new wave of technology just leave them in the dust? That is definitely something to think about. Until next time.